Hi, welcome to the Silver Spleen's Memories of Making Movies, Change of Gangster. I worked on this movie back in the summer of 2016, right after I'd worked on Shockwave. The movie finally did come out in the late spring of 2019, but only in China, and if we're honest, only for about a week. But that doesn't matter. Obviously, I should have shot this video when I worked on the film, but I didn't. However, I did manage to keep some notes so I can at least share with you some of the highlights of working on this film. I had to audition for this movie. Unsurprisingly, it usually involves meeting up with the same 5 or 6 other white guys who'd play bad guys in local films. Those of us that were chosen to work on the movie went back to the same office later to have our measurements taken for the wardrobe department. It was the same person that's worked on 2 other movies before with me, From Vegas to Macau 2 and Mission Milano. So on the first day of filming when I showed up, the clothing actually fit me. But I think it's also fair to say that the clothing just fit me. There wasn't any room to spare. I never looked so Korean in my whole life, and hopefully I'll never have to do it again. I brought my own footwear because generally they don't have any that fits me, and they thought that this would look really nice, and I have to say, I don't. One thing that was nice, however, was that I was allowed to use my 5'11" man purse because they felt that it fit with the character, a foreign criminal. But at least that way I was able to keep lots of extra drinks and phone batteries and other assorted fun stuff on my person at all times. That didn't matter as much as it sometimes does because a lot of the filming we did was on Sayong Choi Street right in the middle of Mongkok, so it was never a problem to find a 7-Eleven that was open late. Working on Sayong Choi Street was a lot of fun for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's an iconic Hong Kong location, it's been in a lot of movies like One Night in Mongkok, and because you're there all night, you get to meet a lot of really interesting people. It was also fun because people walking by on the street, which is a big shopping district, realized there was a movie being shot and so started to take pictures of us. It was a lot of fun for me too because at least once I got recognized as the Silver Spleen. It was fun, but it was also work. There were times that we'd finish up about 2 o'clock in the morning and I'd have to catch the all-night minibus back to near where I live. And one night, this woman who was sitting next to me fell asleep on my shoulder. I took a picture while she was asleep because it just seemed so nice. One night, we couldn't get very much work done because some guy took it upon himself to suddenly claim that he was a gangster that controlled Sayong Choi Street and stood in the middle of the street holding up the entire production. Eventually, he left the street but went upstairs and started throwing bottles of water down on people and hit a couple of them, and the cops were called. But you know what? That's just part of the adventure of filmmaking in Hong Kong. Speaking of the adventures of filmmaking, I got to spend more than a little time with Francis Ng's son, Feynman, who plays a spoiled child star in the movie. And let me just say, the kid's a natural. I didn't get to spend as much time with Chi Hung, but at least I did get to take a picture with him. It was really great for me to meet Brother B from all the Young and Dangerous movies, and I also have to say, his English was surprisingly a lot better than I would have expected. I also got to meet a lot of actors from the mainland that I was only slightly familiar with, but it was a lot of fun getting to work with them. Jackie was really nice, and this girl, whose name I don't remember, but she's only 17, so it's probably better that way. They were both really nice and a lot of fun to work with, and we talked with each other as much as we could. I also got to take this really funny picture with Xiao Xuan, and I know I just mispronounced his name, but he was really funny and really nice, even though he didn't speak English and I don't speak Mandarin, so it was still fun. Speaking of fun, making movies is fun, but sometimes it's hard work while you're having fun. For example, they had to set up a reaction shot where we were getting fake blood put into our face. Now that's okay because you got a camera looking at you, but when you realize in the back of your mind, Francis Ng is kneeling down with a spray bottle full of fake blood and throwing pieces of plastic tripe in your face and spraying you, and he's laughing, and you can't laugh, you have to look horrified while all this stuff is getting... It was like the greatest moment of my life that I couldn't respond to, but it was a lot of fun. 20 minutes later, as the fake blood started to dry and the flies found it, it wasn't as much fun. But I was very grateful that someone I've worked with on a couple of different movies told me that if I really needed to get rid of that stuff, and let's face it, I really did, the best thing would be shaving cream. And it turns out she was right, so thank you again. It was also hard sometimes to do very simple things like climb out of a car. I'm 6'4" and I usually run around 240, 250, all right, 250, okay, 260, whatever. At one point in the film, I have to climb out of a car through the broken windshield. It wasn't necessarily easy. In fact, I broke the rearview mirror on the first take, but nobody really noticed. And then I just slide down the hood looking silly, but luckily it's a silly movie, so it actually worked. Sometimes it was difficult just for technical reasons. We got some reaction shots of myself and Jackie driving around in a van, and the only way for them to do that was for one of the cameramen to lay down on the floor in the back seat. I took a couple of these pictures that frankly look a little weird out of context, but I assure you, it's really just about filming. Now, let's face it, I'm 50-something years old and I'm on a perpetual diet, and obviously it doesn't always work, but I try not to eat things that I know I shouldn't eat. But then one night, Francis Ng walked around with a box full of egg tarts, handing them out to people, and he looked at me and handed me an egg tart. And let me tell you something, as a lifelong Hong Kong movie fan, when Francis Ng gives you an egg tart, you eat it. And I did. People think being in movies is glamorous. Well, it isn't. A lot of times when you get changed, you have to do it in this weird little tent. And I didn't necessarily get a picture this time, but quite a lot of the time my head would stick right out of the top. There's no trailers in Hong Kong movies. I even managed to keep a souvenir from filming. In one part of the film, myself and the other foreign criminals break into a restaurant to try to find something that we think is hidden in a statue of Guanggong, the red-faced god. Well, he's not in there, and the only reason we know that is because someone throws it on the ground and smashes it. And in real life, we actually did that. And so I decided, while we were cleaning up after the filming was done, that I would keep a little memento. And that's what I did. I actually almost got in trouble at least once or twice because I was the sort of person who, is very comfortable waving a large handgun around, but that's part of my job. I consider it part of method acting. And sometimes when we'd get bored while we were working on Sai Yung Choi Street and there were lots of people around, I would just do things to try to keep the mood light. And so at one point, I looked around at all the people and I was standing in front of a Broadway, which is a place that sells like electronic appliances and stuff like that. And I took out that huge chrome Desert Eagle and I waved it in the air and I said, "Bingo sung san dinwa, who wants a new phone?" And really it was funny because a production assistant came over very quickly and asked me to return the gun to props. And I looked at her and I said, it's not like anyone really believes me, do they? Change of Gangster's not going to make An Hui nervous, but it was never intended to. It was a fun movie to watch and it was a really fun movie to work on. And I have to say it's one of the best, most interesting, and certainly most unique experiences I've had working on films. I hope you enjoyed this video because I certainly enjoyed being able to share it with you. Thank you for watching.